This is the Mojec Meters International factory floor, located along the Oshodi-Apapa Expressway, Lagos. Collectively, the different assembly lines here produce well over 1 million units of smart meters every year, serving different power distribution companies across the country. The installation manager, Mr. Monday Bogu, tells me about the operation.
We have installed capacity of 1.2 million meters, ratio 70 to 30.
When you say ratio 70 to 30, what does that mean?
It means we are able to produce 70% of the installed capacity as single-phase meters and 30% as three-phase meters.
All right, so tell me about the different production lines that you have.
We have 3 divisions: the single-phase, the three-phase, and then we have the CIU, or which we want to call the UI, user interface unit. So those are the 3 subdivisions. Along the assembly line, we have each officer or each worker assigned a task or multiple tasks. They do we have some who are proficient in soldering. They solder the component that are supposed to be soldered. And those are supposed to screw, they also take part in screwing those aspects of the meter that are supposed to be screwed. The most critical point of the assembly line is that upon total assembly of a meter, they are sent to the machines for test. We have the calibration test machine, which we use in calibrating these meters. You know, they are not like the electromechanical meters whereby you have moving parts. We don't have any moving parts, so the calibration is done by software. After the calibration, the meters are sent to the test lab, where they are tested against all other standards as recommended by IEC. They go through the frequency variation test, they go through accuracy tests, they go through reliability tests, they go through tests of meter constants, and a few other multiple tests before they are confirmed.
So talk about the projects you're working on now, or the orders that you're working on right now.
We have orders from ADC. We are to supply ADC with 150,000 units of generator meters. We are to supply them with over 5,000 units of LV, MD prepaid meters. We are also supplying them with some units of single-phase and three-phase BS meters. We have orders with Just Electricity Distribution Company. Recently, that's about 3 contracts running with Just. Single-phase, three-phase, MD, prepaid, and statistical meters. We also have orders with Abuja Electricity Distribution Companies.
Shortly afterwards, we sit with the MD CEO, Mojec Meters International, Chantel Abdul, who speaks about the intervention of the Bank of Industry and other industry-specific issues.
Ms. Chantel Abdul, thank you for coming on BOI Weekly. All right, so tell us about Mojec Meters International.
Mojec Meters International is a subsidiary of Mojec Global, and Mojec Global is the group holdings company, of which Mojec International is a subsidiary. Focuses on our metering business. I think a lot of people in the market knows Mojec as a metering company, but they're often aware, of course, of the variety of businesses that we're involved in as well. But Mojec International, of course, which is the holdings company, started in 1985, and at the time, Mojec was well known under the days, or rather, in the auspices of the Nigerian Electricity Power Authority, and we did a lot of business with PHCN then as well. We were primarily known for metering then. We did a lot of work in transmission, and we were probably one of the first companies in Nigeria to bring electricity meters into the market in Nigeria.
Are you assembling or manufacturing?
For us, we chose assembly. Now we're backward integrating as the market has matured. We produce at the moment at what's known as the complete knockdown. All right, so that's a higher level of assembly versus, so we're soldering, right, onto the motherboard, which you will see as well. We produce a wide array of products. You have the non-smart prepaid meters, which are, again, prepaid meters that do not have, that are not smart able, as we say in the industry. And then, of course, we do. Now, the smart meters are used in the residential areas, but then you also have the industrial meters. Now, those meters are for higher energy consumption, which, of course, a lot of industries. And that also runs, it could be a huge apartment building, it could be a hotel. Those are maximum demand meters, so we also assemble those at the factory. We also produce DIN rail meters, right? These are somewhat cheaper types of meters, right? That can be used either within a city or in the suburb or in a rural area.
So who are your off-takers?
The answer to that is sort of twofold, right? Who is my ultimate client is the end user. That's you and I, yeah? You and I, those who own homes, those who own offices, factories, malls, whatever it is, right? But who is my direct client is the utility. So the utility is our direct client.
Do IPPs patronize you as well?
The only reason they're not is because they have not set up yet, right? Or at least because most IPPs usually sell to the utility, or at least most of those that I'm aware of. Now that the minister has set the policy, right, or NERC, for the willing buyer, willing seller, contract engagement for power generation, I'm sure we're going to be getting approached by a lot more of those arrangements. I know quite a few have called us, actually, and I'm sure we'll be getting patronage from those as well.
There have been reports in the industry that some discos are reluctant to buy electricity meters from local manufacturers. What's your response to these reports?
That was the case in 2013, probably. That was probably so in 2014. Fast forward to today, that is no longer the case. In fact, as far back as 2015, that was not the case, right? And I think if it was cheaper, or foreign meters were cheaper, it would make sense. They probably would want to buy them abroad. But in this case, or what is true today, is that foreign meters are not cheaper, right? Our meters equate with, or rather equal, if not maybe comparable in pricing to meters that are imported. The whole sense of importation is because we have this mindset that it's better technology, well tested, who produced it, quality assurance, the whole 9 yards.
So let's talk about the Bank of Industry. Where did the story begin?
Bank of Industry, as I mentioned, came into the picture in 2011 when we approached them about the desire to produce meters in Nigeria. Partly because we knew that obviously there would be a huge demand. Of course, there was a huge metering gap at the time in 2011, about 80% metering gap in the country, where a lot of homes were not metered in Nigeria.
It will be interesting to hear about your experience at the Bank of Industry whilst you were, for instance, applying for the loan, whilst the structure of the loan was being worked out. What was your experience? Bank of
Industry was probably one of the few firms that I was very impressed with. I'd just come back to Nigeria then, and I was impressed with their structure. I remember BOI, which is known as the BOI had a trust and investment arm, right, as well. And they were willing to even do some of the feasibility and market study alongside us, right, to be able to, put together what was going to be a comprehensive business plan to explain, of course, how, the use of funds, right, the funds utility, and, of course, the return on investment, et cetera. I'm excited to state that, of course, what we had on paper has come to pass today. At the time, we had looked to, have a penetration, probably about 50% in the market. But I'm glad to say that today, we're at probably about 80% penetration, where we're doing business with at least 7 or 8 out of 11 of the utilities in Nigeria today.
So let's talk about the impact of that intervention by the Bank of Industry, which is run into about 3-4 years now. Where were you in terms of production and capacity at that time? And I'd like you to compare that to where you are right now.
Prior to engaging BOI, of course, we were using our own funds for business. And not just our own funds, but funds at commercial rate, all right? So the commercial banks, which at the time was more single digit, not single digit, double digits, but more like 18% or what have you. Today, if you fast forward today, without BOI's intervention, I would be, funds at 20-something%, right? But to access money at 9%, okay, was a lifesaver, right, in Nigeria. And of course, it made everything a lot easier, for us. So obviously, the acquisition costs for all of our equipment that we so desperately needed, right, for our production process, was a little cheaper to achieve. And also, it also gave us that, as I mentioned again, that soft landing as well, because we had that 1-year moratorium, all right, in our repayment, all right. And that 1-year moratorium, I think, helped with the cushion, as I mentioned to you, in 2013 to 2014, there was very little business being done, right? So it helped a lot then, because we probably wouldn't have been able to make the repayments. But we, of course, aggressively went after the market, and by 2015 or what have you, we're getting a lot more uptake from the utilities. And then many utilities, I remember Eco Disco and even Abuja and quite a few, who, contrary to what a lot of people thought, were willing and were one of the very first few, even Ibadan Disco, I would hate to even segregate right now, because there were quite a few of them who supported us. And that's because they knew that as a company, we not only had the technology, we not only had the quality products, but we also had a quality service, all right? And service is key. You don't just sell the meters and kiss them goodbye. The service is required, because these meters, as I mentioned, are smart electronics.
Tell me about the terms of the loans you're servicing with the Bank of Industry.
We went for a 7-year term, what's known as a term loan. All right, it was a 7-year term loan, 1-year moratorium, and of course, by the 2nd year, you begin to pay down on the principal and the interest. So I think we applied through them in 2012, and I think we got disbursement the same year, actually, and it was rapidly disbursed for us as well.
Were there things in the course of your interaction with the Bank of Industry that you thought that would be some useful feedback for the bank in terms of things you thought they could do differently?
We tell BOI that it's important that it's not just enough when you're trying to build an industry to set up a production facility and just provide term loans or what's known as capital of funding to acquire equipment and equipment. It's essential and very important to also provide what's known as OPEX as well, all right, or what we term working capital in Nigeria. So they need to actually sort of redefine the fund a little bit to include working capital, all right, so that would help leapfrog, right, or rather create a leapfrog effect for the entrepreneurs and the investors that they back. Mojec models itself, we see ourselves being the GE of Africa. We not only produce meters today, thankfully, we are, as I mentioned, we're going to be producing the meter boxes, the circuit breakers. The beauty of circuit breakers is that they're not just used by the utilities, right? They're used in all things electrical, in a variety of industries, right? We're also going into smart homes, all right, and what's known as the Internet of Things and energy management. We're also going into power generation. For us, we see ourselves, and one of our slogans is powering your world. And really, another major slogan, or rather principle that we believe in, and it's again a staple of the company, is building a world of possibilities. In Africa or in Nigeria, where you see a world of impossibilities everywhere you look, all right, for us, in this firm, and when you step foot into this shores, we're building a world of possibility.
I'd like you to talk about any set of challenges that are unique to you as Mojec, producers of electricity meters in that value chain.
At the time, we had quite a few challenges, which of course again, as I mentioned, we sort of pushed open the doors and made sure that we could get policies to be on our side. Part of that was ensuring that local producers were supported and supported wholeheartedly first before any importation. Also, the ability to access financing, pardon me, not financing, but Forex. In the days where there were issues, all right, we had to make a case, all right, to the CBN and to the government that manufacturers, and particularly the power industry who relies on us, it's important that we'll be able to access foreign exchange so that we can be able to fulfill our LCs and, of course, make good on our obligations or our contractual obligations to the utilities.
The Bank of Industry is usually interested in the knock-on effects of their interventions. For instance, job creation. How many people are gainfully employed here?
Today, I can say that with our installed capacity, I mean, if I'm at full installed capacity and operating at full installed capacity, I should be employing close to about 500 people at the factory.
How many?
But we're probably, about half of that, right, on a rotation basis. And that's just not the factory. So, but the beauty of what, as you mentioned, the knock-on effect, the beauty of what BO has been able to do is just not what we did production, all right? But what BO has also been able to do is, of course, our administrative building and the services that the products provide, right? So which then, of course, means the field engineers, our installers, right, who we have on an ad hoc basis, and we keep constantly working as we have projects across the country, right? So I would say in total, by the time you add, the installers, of course, who we create jobs for, because if they didn't have installation jobs, there would be no jobs. We'll probably say between, 2,000 to 3,000 people in terms of the various parts, companies who sign up with us and are constantly doing our installations, whether under Eko, Disco, or Abuja that covers 4 different states, or Enugu that covers 5 different states, or Ibadan that covers X number of states. So we have at least about 3,000 in strength of people who are working with us either in ad hoc or full-time basis.
Now, there are about 3 to 4 electricity meters producers between Lagos and Ibadan. It must be stiff in terms of competition, isn't it?
Mojec benchmark itself on international standards, right? So I feel like I compete more internationally or with international companies and we like to set the pace in the local market. How stiff is the competition? I think other companies are, they're good at what they do as well, they provide the meters. But I think Mojec just does it a lot better. I mean, of course, it's natural, right? And I think competition is good. I welcome it. I certainly welcome it, because I think if anything, it makes everybody much better, right? Puts us on our toes. Hey, I can't solve the problems alone, right? And that's the truth. I can't solve it all alone, but I enjoy solving problems and I thrive on solving problems. So solving this for us was, I would say, it wasn't super easy, but it was welcome. We embraced it and we said, hey, they're problems, we need to solve them, right? And I think that's what business is and that's what entrepreneurship is. Right? You're solving problems, and you're solving problems all day long. If you can't, then you either go home or either go hard or go home.
Policy drives everything. Are there aspects of existing policies that you would like the government to address?
I think we can definitely always do better. And I think to push things along even further, like you said, we've made some progress, but we're not there yet. We're still definitely not there yet. And in order to do that, I definitely think Capney should be reinstated. I believe he was recently reinstated, and if anything, I think the government needs to sort of get behind it, and so that if Nigerians are willing to, just as you are willing to buy your phone, feel free to come and, to be able to pay for your meter, right? And the government should also support with funding, right, to be able to, and I believe there's some policies or some, programs in place to provide meter funding, right, to be able to acquire the meters for the utilities, right? And I think furthermore, which again, CBN is actually beginning to work on this as well. So many of these things are work in progress, all right? CBN is working on providing funding. That was something that we lobbied for the longest time, right? Where, the Chinese and their government or what have you were backing those, our counterparts with single-digit dollar funds, right? We needed CBN to get behind us with low single digit Naira funding, right? That would enable us to be able to not only have access to working capital, but also be able to extend more credit and longer term credit. And that's really where we need to go.